Mooncakes That the Moon Gladly Takes by Jane Law. Petite in size but mighty in flavors, the mooncake game is strong in this one. Best known for their artisanal handcrafted ice cream, this iconic dessert bar has been ticking all the right boxes for this mid-autumn season. Over the week, we decided to head down to Uptown Damansara by ourselves to join in the buzz. Creme de la Creme, as its name suggests, is really the best at its kind, especially when it comes to their latest invention. Enter their 4 new Petit Gâteaux in a limited edition gift set that has taken the humble mooncake to a completely new level. Inspired by Chinese mythology, the mooncakes come in the shape of Chang'e's elixir, Little White Rabbit, the Red Lantern, and Fly Me to the Moon. All 4 are equally intricate in their design and complex in their flavors. Layers after layers that will burst in your mouth as you take a mouthful of these cuties. They may be too pretty to cut into, but once you take a bite, you will not even put your spoon down for a second. It is like you are sitting on a ceramic stool at your own freshly grown garden that is blooming with milky tulips. The sky is wide open for your eyes, paints of golds and pinks swirling around the round yolk that is slowly starting to rise above the earth. It is the perfect sunrise and you are there sighing in awe with your cup of tea. At first sip, it is nice. Mild, fruity, with a flowery spice aftertaste. It does not burn your tongue, nor does it sting. It also has a roasted flavor to it, addictive sip after sip. Spring mornings have never been more beautiful than this. Chang'e's elixir is exactly like that. It is a praising ode to the blossoming springs, the smooth, tender taste of hojicha ice cream with the fragrant scent of sakura, and a tint of that honeyed spice from the lychee rosemary middle. The sesame crunch and the white chocolate outer layer adds an interesting contrast to the texture of the whole dessert. It is the pure epitome of velvety in every crunch. Summer calls for the perfect vacation on the beach. The pricks of ivory sand between your toes. The sound of the roaring waves lapping on the shore. You feel yellow rays of the sun kissing your face, laminating its warmth. The tiki bar there offers you a cocktail and you have never encountered a drink that celebrates tropical so well. It is fruity, sweet, but with a little tartness at the tip of your tongue. It has a thick, refreshing undertone that makes this vacation even more rejuvenating. You can get all of that magic in this Little White Rabbit. The Sakurai mango compote that complements the tanginess of the passion fruit yolk cased in a creamy, delicious coconut ice cream. The raspberry sorbet gives a rosy note to sedate the sweetness from the white chocolate shell and the almond crumble that helps provide a subtle, nutty profile to the dessert. Close your eyes and imagine this. You are in a coffee shop. You can smell the fresh morning air from the ajar door. Soft beats pumping out from the cafe stereo. Chatters and the whirring sounds from coffee machines slowly become distant white noises as you peek outside the windows and admire autumn's coming. It is a sight to see the leaves dance with the wind before they sprawl across the streets, making a reddish-orange carpet for the sidewalks. You snap out of your trance when the barista calls your name and hands you your latte. Thick and nutty are the first 2 words that comes into your mind when you swallowed your drink. There is an indistinct sweetness to it with a slight edge of bitterness, but it is not overbearing. In fact, it is just nice. A personal favorite, Red Lantern is a revolution of flavors. The earthy ground pistachio ice cream with the ultra-soft and fluffy lemon sponge, bittersweet dark chocolate, and the ultimate catch, homemade sticky, gooey strawberry jam that does not taste sugary at all. You would have never experienced anything as peculiar as strawberry with pistachios, but you wouldn't regret it after the first nibble, because it is a wonderful symphony. Pistachio and strawberry is the new peanut butter and jelly. There is a biting breeze in the air as white ploughs of snow like sugar crackles underneath your boots. You seek shelter in a cozy bakery nearby at the corner of the street. Once you enter, you feel the dim yellow lights shine on your face. The temperature in here is seemingly warmer. You order a hot chocolate. One sip and you realize this is no ordinary chocolate beverage. You can taste rich, frothy dark cocoa with a hint of that piquant orange tang. It's fancy, gourmet, and the heat from the chocolate warms the soul. Fly Me to the Moon definitely admits that kind of a mood. The marriage between bittersweet dark chocolate and the acidic orange has been perfected. Sour tangerine ganache and wrapped in thick dark chocolate and a mandarin sorbet with a nutty hazelnut crunch for a bite. Chocolate lovers rejoice and get ready to sink your teeth in the ultimate luscious luxury. Not only do these mooncakes look the part, their tastes are impeccably over the moon. By over the moon, we mean out of this world. We had a lot of fun tasting this enjoyable set of mooncakes. Creme de la Creme definitely deserves all the applause they are getting for their innovation, creativity, and culinary profile. You can see them pouring blood, sweat, and tears in their desserts, as if they were works of art. If the dessert scene were described as art pieces, Creme de la Creme is undoubtedly the Leonardo da Vinci of desserts. Top 3 articles for Mother's Day Writing Contest. My Guardian Angel by Clarice Tan Pei Sin. In the cold of the night, a frail body shivered as lighting cast ghastly shadows across the cadaverous walls of her room. Tiny fists clutched a warm blanket as the child pursed her lips to brace the nocturnal horrors. Boom! Such ferocious thunder led to a primal scream of raw terror. Immediately, doors flung open. Lights switched on, and dashed in was a heroine, and knightess in shining armor, her mother. Cradled in warm and familiar arms, the child melted in her mother's embrace as her mother's voice trailed away. It's okay, my dearest. Mummy's here. Mummy will always protect you no matter what. Wind whistled in my ears as I stand at the edge of my sanity. Below me, traffic bustled as usual. Taxi honks, people shouting. Welcome to New York City, where all dreams come true, except mine. 6 months ago, an Ivy League university offered me a full-ride scholarship. As I read that email aloud to my mother, who has single-handedly raised me for 17 years, her caramel brown eyes illuminated with tears of joy as she pulled me into her loving arms. I made it. I finally made it. However, I didn't know that this is when things spiraled down. Discriminated, harassed, stressed, depressed. I was not living the American dream, rather a hellish pit. Arms in the air like a crucified deity who is ready to wash the sins of the world and of myself. I took one last breath as I ring. Caller ID, Mummy. With trembling hands, I took the call. Girl, Mummy missed you very much. I know it's hard to be out there all alone. If you're stressed, you can come back home anytime, okay? Remember, Mummy always loves you. I crashed down onto the parapet and whispered softly, Mummy, I love you too. My Mother's Workspace by Teo Jin Wen. Lazy afternoon sunbeams filtered through the blinds, basking the space in an ethereal glow of orange. Dust particles float about, searching for a place to land, but too restless to settle too soon. The soft mechanical humming of printers and fax machines is just faintly heard from across the room where I stand. The side of my forehead pressed against the border between my room and this one. I sigh as I glance across the room. An old bookcase with sinking shelf stands in a corner. It's filled to the brim with all kinds of reading materials, from textbooks and novels to reports and manuals. Another stands adjacent, home to numerous binders and files, each with some sort of important-sounding label. Almost all of the books are hardcovers and many at least university level with prestigious origins. None have dust, as the owner still references them often. The desk can be described as organized chaos. Multiple stacks of paper piled neatly across its surface. Wires dangle below it, bumping against each other and its wooden frame, somehow still sturdy after its making 30 years ago. Multiple tabs line the top of the computer screen, with an additional conference call currently ongoing. I watch as my bustling mother swiftly extracts papers from the piles and attends to the machines, all the while chuckling and responding charismatically to whatever her colleague said. Her work chair creaks underneath her slight movements, a sign of wear. She adjusts the frame of her photograph as she settles back into it, smiling fondly as if in response to the family inside it before circling back to the call. The corners of my mouth curl upwards as I make the journey to the kitchen. She works hard. The least I can do is make her some coffee. Embracing Regularities by Richelle Yushen Kuo. Although the lighting in early morning was dim, the traces of time could be seen clearly on a woman's face in the mirror. She smiled. She did not know when and how the lines found their ways onto her face. It could be around her early 30s, when she was juggling between amateur parenting and cumbersome office work, or when she was staying up late to prepare her daughter's school necessities. Those wrinkles were not aesthetically pleasing, so she instinctively reached for the bottle of skin lotion that was long untouched. However, when she thought of the grueling task ahead, her hand stopped. She sighed, not wanting the costly lotion to be wiped away with her sweat. For a woman like Rebecca, the habit of frowning had made aging inevitable. Whilst doing her laundry, she caught sight of a pink tube top among the humdrum whites and blacks. Feelings of resentment arose as she could feel it glaring ferociously at her, provoking her to jump on her feet. Her distaste was further aggravated when she imagined her daughter walking into the tuition center in such provocative outfit. At any second, the devil could have pounced on her. As Rebecca was stomping to her daughter's room, she was fatefully confronted by a picture of her hanging on the wall. She was in her blossoming youth, and her outfit was just as sprightly as her daughter's. The entanglements in Rebecca's mind tightened when she was reminded that they had not talked for days since she last reprimanded her daughter for disobeying the curfew. Daylight seeped through the curtains. Breakfast menu of the day was peanut butter and jam. Biting her lips, she scurried back to the kitchen. The talk could come after that rascal's sweet dreams. Never Have I Ever, a true breath of fresh air for Indians everywhere, by Pavitra Raman. Never Have I Ever is currently the #1 trending show on Netflix, and as far as trendy Netflix shows go, I would say that this one is very well earned. The show starts with, minor spoiler alert, Devi Vishwakumar kneeling to a shrine and praying to Hindu gods with her geometry book, getting blessed while the tennis champion John McEnroe narrates her life as the show goes. She has a few wishes which can be pretty much summed up as the goals of typical high school girls. Be cool, get hot, snag a boy. Therefore, I naturally assumed that this show would be nothing more than just a brown knockoff of average Netflix teen dramas, like The Kissing Booth and To All the Boys I've Loved Before, where I have to keep my supply of eye rolls, gag reflexes, and cringes ready. But the fact that Mindy Kaling spearheaded this project gave me a little hope. Hence, I gave this series a shot and I'm very glad that I did. I rarely like to be proven wrong, but this time I was delighted. Many things separated Never Have I Ever from the usual Netflix series, but the way the characters were portrayed is unquestionably noteworthy. They were not the long-sought ideal of a normal teenager with normal teenager problems. The characters expanded to unique real-life and underrepresented life stories. Although each character can't have a subplot of their own, they're all afforded the potential for depth. The show has the luxury of weaving the storyline so that every character gets to register that they're experiencing their own foundational traumas. The key reason that Never Have I Ever is very special and close to my heart is representation in this show. As a South Indian, someone who rarely gets represented in the media, seeing a replica of me made me so happy. The little things in the show, like Nalini's wedding necklace, also known as Thali, that looks just like my mother's, and the fact that Devi's father calls her Kana, as well as the way Mohan said the moped had been blessed in a temple so that there's nothing to worry about. I love that they spoke Tamil unexpectedly, in the midst of casually speaking in English, and how none of it is subtitled. It all felt very natural. I love that no one wears shoes inside the house. I love that Devi addresses her uncle as Periyappa, just like I do. This show represents us in a completely unadulterated and highly authentic way. Never Have I Ever also rightfully represented South Asians. mainly Indians without reinforcing any overused stereotypes. Mohan could be a great example of that. Indian representation in American series and sitcoms has come a long way. We started with borderline offensive Apu Nahasa Pimapitelon in The Simpsons, who became the preeminent Indian face on television during the 1990s. But as time goes, we had a few more representations, but they were all quite similar in a way or two. Heretofore, we've only had socially awkward men trying to figure out their love life, like Kumail Nanjiani in Silicon Valley, Aziz Ansari in Master of None, and of course, Kunal Nair in A Big Bang Theory, but never have I ever depicts a confident and loving Indian man who's not afraid to show his sensitive side. It's a refreshing departure from the nerdy, socially anxious Indian man to see someone like Mohan. This show is also a massive leap from the unspoken rule that all Indian fathers are only supposed to be strict. Sandhiya Ramamurthy played a smitten father who shared his love of tennis and ping pong while passing down his wisdom on gardening to his daughter in the shown flashbacks. Mohan wasn't overbearing or emotionally distant with his daughter. He was doting, affectionate, and warm instead. It was very heartening to witness that. Never Have I Ever beautifully illustrates the Indian community and does not hold back to represent other minority groups as well. The vibrant visual and humorous appeal of the show does not undercut the severe issues of mental health, grievances over the loss of a loved one, loneliness, and cultural pressures. Overall, Never Have I Ever is truly an entertaining and emotional show that exhibits real-life problems in its own odd, humorous way. All in all, it's a great show and very much worth watching, and having it narrated by the tennis legend John McEnroe is the cherry on top. It is impossible to watch Never Have I Ever without feeling your heart rate pick up or tearing up at some of the very raw scenes, so I suggest keeping a box of tissue right beside you. Tough Love is Too Tough by Sydney Gunn. In Malaysia, it is perfectly legal to hit a child. This might not seem like a groundbreaking fact. Countless of us have been under the threatening control of the rotan, or the looming palm of your parents and teachers. To us, getting disciplined in this way is nothing out of the ordinary, and as far as some are concerned, it is not wrong either. Based on the education regulations, student discipline, all parents are expected to accept the fact that public schools have the legal right to inflict school punishments and to extreme measures permission for schools to cane a child. According to a response to the highly controversial Spare the Rod article published on the Star Online, parents agreeing or disagreeing with such barbaric ways of disciplining really does not matter. Corporal punishment, which refers to this kind of physical punishment, has been a debatable and thorny issue in our culture for generations. It is a rod burrowed deep in our education system, coercing students into obedience and submission under their superiors. It comes in many forms: caning, slapping, or pinching, anything that causes physical pain onto the person. Just by simply reviewing the elements of corporal punishment, it makes plenty sense why this method of punishment should not be acceptable in schools and in homes. So why is it still used? The question now asked is there any benefit for this form of violent punishment? Solely on a physical level, it is problematic on the child's vessel. When one is so young and so precious, corporal punishment inflicts pain on children, but the whole point is to condition the children to fear the consequences of their bad actions. However, some practices of corporal punishment go overboard and end up physically harming the child and giving them battle marks when they are only at such tender age. It then subjects children to the frank questions of their peers, uncomfortable questions. Are those cane marks? Why are your eyes so swollen? Sahil, a student who studied in an Indian government school, shared that his teachers would throw hard objects such as dusters or books at students to make them behave. Another government school female student also confided that a teacher yanked at a schoolgirl's ear so hard that she started to bleed. An even more serious case, 11-year-old Muhammad Taufik Amin Muhammad Gaddaf in 2017 almost faced death due to physical punishment. In essence, corporal punishment puts children in risk of the irreversible outcome of death. A study exploring the negative scientific impacts of corporal punishment was made by Akemi Tomoda, which showed that harsh corporal punishment reduced children's grey matter. As grey matter becomes reduced or slowed down, especially during a time of rampant and speedy growth experienced in maturing children, children may process information in their brains slower. This affects their critical thinking and the ability to absorb details at a faster pace. As such, the application of corporal punishment in the disciplining of children could actually hinder the development of a growing child. There have also been countless scientific studies on how harmful corporal punishment can be to a child mentally. According to the American Psychological Association, children's exposure to this corporal punishment will develop their own penchant towards violence instead of correcting their juvenile behavior. Research found that 2 to 7% of psychological disorders such as depression, bulimia, personality disorders, and intellectual disabilities are linked to such physical and harsh punishments in childhood mentioned above. Corporal punishment gives results, but it causes trauma in a child's life later on, cautioned Nick Soraya, an alumni of a Chinese government school. Mental health has been treated as a myth in Asian communities for as long as one can remember. It is dismissed as something unimportant, a mere snowflake millennial concept that is taken too seriously by the younger generations. Thus, the older generation regards these disorders as flaky and weak. Thus, they will always believe that corporal punishment is an indisputable way to educate their child for generation after generation. Corporal punishment is like a gauze that can only staunch the bleeding from the flesh wound. It cannot treat the cancer of defiance and disobedience. It is not that simple. There are other ways to discipline, such as compassion and understanding. We are the byproduct of our children, the tried and tested of corporal punishment beings. Is it finally time we adopt more compassionate ways of disciplining? I'm thinking of ending things. Redefining the horror movie scene by Liu Yan-ro. You can say anything. You can do anything. But you can't fake a thought. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a Netflix original movie based on a book with the same name by Ian Reid. The director, Charlie Kaufman, who is also the producer and the screenwriter of this movie, is known to make movies that require most viewers to watch them for more than once in order to get the plot. How did I know? Well, this was not my first Kaufman movie that I've watched, so I do not expect myself to get the plot immediately after watching it. Set in winter, the story begins with a few shots of a cozy house with a beautiful interior, and an old man can be seen looking out the window while a woman was narrating the story. I'm thinking of ending things, the young woman then said to herself, but not out loud when she's in the car with her boyfriend before they begin their trip to meet her boyfriend's parents on a rural farm. Though the narrator kept emphasizing how her relationship with her boyfriend was great, I was left wondering at first why she would want to end it. On their way to meet Jake's parents, the young couple talked about their interests and also kept themselves updated with each other's lives. Though this particular part may seem a little boring because of the long-winded conversation, but those 10 minutes contain important details for you to understand the movie during your first watch. Despite being only minor details, they are like puzzle pieces from the sides. You do not know what the full picture is going to be like, but when you build up the sides first, you will know where the middle puzzle pieces go when you reach the end of the movie, because that's how the storyline works. Spoiler alert. In between the scenes that tell the story of the young couple when they were on the road, you would have recognized the scenes with a mysterious old man from the start of the movie, a janitor in a school. I was extremely confused and had so many questions that I want to clarify. What is the connection between the young couple and the janitor? The moment when the young couple reached Jake's parents' house, things still do not make sense, as I recognize the interior of the house shown at the beginning of the movie is the same as the old man's house. Things start to get more confusing, like Jake's parents went from looking normal and healthy in their 50s to Jake's father looking old and having dementia all of a sudden, while Jake's mom on the other hand became really sick. As someone who's not very good at analyzing things, I missed out a lot of hints about who Jake was. Turns out, he was actually the younger version of the old man. If you ever googled about this movie, it's labeled as horror. It definitely isn't your typical horror movie. It's not filled with ghosts, gore, or any sort of paranormal activity. The horror comes from the feeling of being unwanted. the feeling of being left out and also loneliness. If you pay attention to the movie, you will soon learn that the phrase, "I'm thinking of ending things," actually meant, "I want to end my life," instead of wanting to end the relationship. I was amazed by how the story made viewers believe that the young woman and the entire relationship really existed when they were just a fantasy of Jake's. Jake met the young woman in a bar when he was younger. He was afraid to ask her out, so now when he's older, he fantasized about how his life would be like if he really did ask her out. That explains why the moment when Jake's mother met the young woman, she kept saying that Jake had finally found someone, because Jake never found anyone from the start. He's just a lonely janitor in a school filled with students that are young and in love, dreaming the life he wanted but could never have. Of course, he could fantasize about how his dream girl can be like, but he also knows that he could not do anything about a depressing reality and is tired of being alone, so he decided to take his own life. I liked how this movie used metaphors and tiny clues to tell the story instead of the usual straightforward storytelling like any other movies. In general, I really liked this movie. Its cinematography was aesthetically pleasing, and it fits the melancholy melody that played throughout the whole movie. Even if you get the plot during your first watch, it's still a rewatchable film as it makes you feel emotional every time when you watch it. Though, do be prepared to make yourself think about life while lying on your bed, staring at the ceiling and never being able to sleep for the whole night after watching this film.